In today's episode, we will transform this dragon into a ruthless killer and lay bare the abilities and weapons that are capable of sending our test subjects to meet their gods in the most painful ways possible. This spectacle will not be suitable for the weak, so please, while we bring our Night Fury inside our facility, use this moment to subscribe, hit that bell icon, and get ready to witness this dragon's 8 brutal methods of execution. For those spectators who are not yet familiar with this type of creature, there is one thing you must know about Night Furies: their intelligence. But why is this important to cover in this episode? There have been countless instances where this Night Fury has shown its intelligence in combat. While it is true that this guy also follows verbal cues from its rider, this guy over time has learned to use its weapons to maximum effectiveness and damage. An animal with this level of cognition means that he can technically get creative with the methods of inflicting pain and death. Just like us humans, we have over time developed pretty creative methods to finish our enemies. Similarly, today Toothless will be tasked with a total of 8 methods of killing, leveraging its entire body to bring an end to these test subjects. Let's start with number 1, the Deadly Whip. This isn't just any ordinary whipping. This is Toothless we're talking about here. This dragon is equipped with a long tail that makes up more than half of the length of its entire body. What does this mean? Well, here's a fun fact for you. Animals with long tails proportional to their body have the ability to inflict insanely powerful impact on anything unlucky enough to be on the other end of that tail. As the animal moves its hind body, this motion will then create a loop which travels to the very tip of the tail, exerting a fatal blow, especially with an animal of this size. This guy in particular has small knobs along the length of his tail. Once these make contact with your body at these speeds, they would severely worsen the damage on your body, potentially cutting you. But not only that, any impact would most likely hit you on these parts of the body, meaning that if you got hit here, for example, your ribs would probably break and sink into your already collapsed lungs. Not to mention that you probably received deep cuts on your body from the speed of the tail. Unless you get hit on the head, you probably won't die immediately. You'd fade away in agonizing pain, wishing for Toothless to end your life in a faster fashion. Number 2, pulled apart. There are many ways in which big animals such as Toothless can yank someone into several pieces, but there's one method in particular that would be quite spectacular to watch. In some instances, we have witnessed Toothless pick up people while he's still airborne, catching them with his hands by the shoulders, legs, etc. But realistically, what would happen to someone if this animal is traveling faster than the speed of sound and then proceeds to grab you? The results would be catastrophic. Let us explain. Our bodies are actually kind of fragile in comparison to a more robust creature like Toothless. And quite frankly, it doesn't take too much strength to literally tear us apart. Now imagine someone chilling on land, and all of a sudden Toothless decides to take this dude on a little tour, except he doesn't slow down. On the contrary, he's still traveling at the speed of sound or faster. Now, 2 things will most likely happen. 1, because he's traveling extremely fast, this means that there is in fact a shockwave that will be produced, meaning that apart from this dude getting yanked, he's probably going to have his eardrums destroyed from the shockwave. But now comes the real damage. Once Toothless opens his hands and grabs onto the victim, the velocity at which he's traveling will literally pull this person apart, leaving Toothless with parts of your upper body in his hands, and you would likely be parted from your shoulders, neck, and perhaps your head. But what would happen if Toothless decided to literally fly through you? Number 3, body impact. In this scenario, Toothless will decide to instead hurt this test subject by doing nothing else but hitting it at the speed of sound. We already witnessed what would happen if Toothless tried to grab him, but now he's hitting it with its head. Something traveling at this speed only means that this dude's soft, squishy body will literally explode upon impact. But will your suffering be cut short? Probably not. Similar to the previous scenario, your head would be parted from your body, and if you didn't know, it is actually quite likely that you will go through something called lucid decapitation, which is the incidence of having your head parted from your body, but still remaining conscious enough to actually see and acknowledge what just happened to you. There have been studies conducted in the past that suggest this phenomenon is actually real, but you can take this with a grain of salt. Regardless of whether you're still conscious or not, you won't be for long. These simulations are about to get a lot more disturbing, so hold on tight. If you enjoy watching Goji Center and would like to support the channel so we can make more epic content, fights, and see more carnage, please take a moment to go check out our merch store, where we will gear you up with epic Goji merch, cool posters, all types of phone cases, and more. Links below in the description. If you don't, that's cool. You can at least subscribe, dude. Alright, back to the episode. Number 4, Deadly Bite. Toothless lives up to its name thanks to its unique jaws, which hold a beautiful set of retractable teeth. This animal's wide skull and muscle attachments suggest that this animal can in fact inflict pretty strong bite forces. We'd like to imagine that this animal does rely on the strong bite force, given that its teeth aren't necessarily as sharp and pointy like other dragons such as the monstrous nightmare or deadly natters. These teeth almost resemble knobs. Now, what does this mean for our test subject? Unfortunately for this guy, he's now going to get crushed instead of impaled by many teeth. Meaning that instead of feeling puncturing wounds, this guy's skin would rupture from the extreme pressures. His bones would break and rip through its skin, his organs would get destroyed, and would most likely die from hemorrhagic shock or blood loss. Yeah, this was pretty painful. A mercy would have been getting stabbed through the heart to shorten his suffering, but no, these teeth wouldn't really do that. So yes, apart from this being a really messy outcome, this was actually one of the most painful ones on this list. Remember how we said that Toothless could probably get creative with these? Number 5, Lethal Drop. Admittedly, Toothless would have to be a huge butthole for doing this simply because killing someone in this fashion is completely unnecessary. But plausible. It has become clear at this point that Toothless can fly at outstanding heights and carry people with him. At this point, it's obvious that he knows that humans cannot fly and most definitely cannot land right. So in this scenario, Toothless carefully picks up this test subject and takes him out for some flying lessons. What happens next is pretty obvious. Now, the real question here is what exactly happens to someone once they hit the ground from 30,000 feet in the air? Once being dropped, your body will accelerate and reach something that is known as terminal velocity, or basically a set maximum speed in which you will fall. This is usually around 120 miles per hour for most people. Assuming you fell on a flat surface, the aftermath will be pretty grim. There have been accounts of certain aftermaths of people falling. They describe them as a flat, mushy layer of flesh, bits of bone, and lots of liquids. The smell is horrendous, and the victim is unrecognizable. This is by far the least painful way to go, but the most messy. The next method will also spray the ground with human remains. Number 6, Deadly Claws. That's right, we weren't going to leave these weapons out. Toothless possesses a very interesting set of claws that are not only sharp, but also seem to be quite bendable. This, believe it or not, will allow Toothless to inflict a more lethal strike. Let us explain. If we take a look at the side view of this animal's paws, we will notice that these claws follow a flat arc trajectory. Any swing by this arm would be deadly since the entire impact will be exerted from this area. But if he bends his claws, all the force will be exerted from these tips, making this strike a lot more lethal, messy, and gory. Having said this, these claws will be able to slap your face off. Literally piercing your frontal bones and opening your face off like a book. That, or you get your entire jaw slapped off. As you can see, the odd flexibility of these claws was no accident, but rather a highly beneficial adaptation for this animal for both locomotion and combat purposes. But let us not forget that this guy is a dragon. The next two methods will remind us of the most notable attributes of these creatures. Number 7, Burned to Death. This list wouldn't be complete without the use of fire. Admittedly, this guy doesn't breathe fire as we know it. This is actually a superheated gas emitted from his mouth known as plasma. This can be used subtly to burn things, and in this case, our test subject. Now, for this scenario, Toothless will cook this dude by literally blowtorching him feet first. But what actually happens to a live victim whenever this happens to them? Well, it's kind of messed up. Human flesh, when exposed to such high temperatures, will not only burn, but also shrink, especially if they're being continuously torched. This goes from being a first-degree burn to an excruciatingly painful second-degree burn to a lethal third degree. At this point, you lose all sensitivity in this area, not the ones that are currently burning. Up next, your organs will also now begin to shrink as well, meaning that your body is now literally cooking itself. You're alive while this is happening, but will probably pass out from the pain. Even if you do survive for a little bit and put the fire out, the damage has already been done. Your body won't hold up to healing itself since there's literally nothing left that hasn't been burned. Now, this is one method of getting burned, but the next one can be a bit more destructive. Number 8, Plasma Blast. So for our very last method, we will showcase what would happen if you were on the wrong end of this creature's dive bomb. This is the act of diving from high altitudes while charging a lethal plasma blast that can destroy huge buildings, and even knock down massive creatures such as the Red Death. You? This is overkill, but for the sake of demonstration, we will task Toothless to unleash its entire fury on this test subject. As we can see, this impact is similar to getting hit by a small bomb. The shockwave emitted and high temperatures of said explosion will immediately turn your soft body into chunks of ground meat and splash your burnt insides into the surrounding area. This was a quick death, but most definitely the most epic. If you were not too far from the impact, this would have been a little more painful. Any debris sent in your direction by the blast would easily be able to cut you from all directions, perhaps sending shrapnel into your organs, causing you to bleed to death in agonizing pain. But there is more to this cinematic universe. Dragons that can spit acid, set themselves on fire, boil you to death, and lots of more unimaginable ways to die. If you don't want to miss these upcoming episodes, make sure you subscribe right now, because the best or worst is yet to come.